I put on the blinders, I say I just do it.
You heard it with your own eyes. All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. We've got some certainly some domestic news for you guys. Donald Trump, unfortunately, with a big victory in court, which really makes no sense at all to me. Like, part of it makes sense, the other part is like bewildering.
It's not bewildering at all. There's no justice in this country. Like,
well, that's
different people play by different rules. It is what it is, and that's the reality that we operate under.
So that's the short answer. That's right. Yeah. So okay, and then on Israel, unfortunately, a lot of news. So worst civilian kill ratio, one of the worst in history. And so we've got an amazing leaked report coming out of Israeli press and The Guardian on that. They've started to enter Gaza City. More people are starving to death. Full-blown genocide right in front of our eyes. Israel is obviously a terrorist state. And then we'll show you a Democrat furiously defending them. And then I'll share this number with you guys. Percentage of Americans who think that we should recognize Palestine as a state, and percentage of members of Congress who think we should recognize Palestine as a state. You're not going to be surprised that there is a disparity, but wait till you see the numbers.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's start off with this.
A New York appeals court has thrown out a massive civil fraud penalty against President Trump, a total that exceeded $500 million. They're calling that penalty excessive.
This ruling by the appeals court is monumental. It was also very unusual in that it took them nearly a year to reach this decision. This is a huge win for Donald Trump, any way you cut it, and this is a stinging rebuke to the Attorney General, Letitia James.
Well, President Donald Trump is saving a pretty penny thanks to a New York appeals court essentially deciding to throw out the massive $515 million penalty against him in that civil fraud case. Now, in that case, in case you have forgotten about it, which was brought by Letitia James, the judge found that Trump had engaged in fraud by essentially exaggerating his wealth for decades, and by exaggerating his wealth, he had committed fraud in order to get better terms for both loans and for insurance. Now, after being found liable, Judge Arthur Engoron ordered him last year to pay $355 million in penalties. With interest, the sum has topped $515 million. Additionally, penalties levied on some other Trump Organization executives, including Trump's sons, Eric and Donald Jr., bring the total to $527 million with interest. So Trump was able to actually hold off on the collection of that money during the appeals process and while posting $175 million bond. Now fast forward to today, and here's ABC's Aaron Katersky explaining the panel's ruling.
The judges are not in agreement here, but it appears they have found that after a 3-month trial, the judge, this was a bench trial, the judge, Arthur Engoron, correctly found that Trump, his eldest sons, and his business perpetrated a decade's worth of business fraud by hyping the value of Trump's assets to include his apartment in Trump Tower. They said it was triple its actual square footage. the value of Mar-a-Lago, his private Florida golf club. They valued it thinking it was an unrestricted waterfront property in Palm Beach when there are heavy restrictions on its development. But they said the penalty that Engoron imposed for all of this fraud of $464 million violated the Eighth Amendment. It was excessive, and so they've thrown out the monetary judgment and may be left to New York's highest court to determine what the ultimate penalty, if any, should be.
So we're going to get to some of the disagreement among the judges through this appeals process, but just to give you a few more details, essentially in this prevailing opinion, they maintained the fraud judgment against Trump. The judges wrote that while the injunctive relief ordered by the court is well crafted to curb defendants' business culture, the court's disgorgement order, which directs that defendants pay nearly $500 million to the state of New York, is an excessive fine that violates the Eighth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Cenk, as someone who has a fancy law degree from Columbia University, number one, what does disgorgement mean? And number two, what are your thoughts on this decision?
Well, I do, as a fancy pants person, I will explain. All right, so basically what they're saying is they have brought down the penalty to zero, but Donald Trump, Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr. can't serve as executives for a couple of years. Whatever the hell that means, because they cheat on that anyway. They just tell the guy who's the figureheaded Trump organization, do this, do that. What are you gonna do? Sue them? Bring them to trial? No, so this means, so guys, the part that makes sense to me in the ruling is it was always a very big number. It was a giant number. So if they said, hey, that's excessive, I get it, okay? But now the number is zero. What?
All or nothing, baby.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense because they're saying he is guilty. He's definitely guilty, right? But then how could the number be zero? So, okay, so that's just perplexing. So look, when you look at the actual case itself, we discussed this obviously as the case was happening, but number one, if stuff like this is around the edges, he valued his property at 15% more than he should have. But that's debatable because if you look at it this way or you look at it that way, nobody's going to trial over that, right? Let alone getting convicted, let alone 300 and some odd million in the beginning, 500 million by the end, right? But Trump, of course, as always, is extraordinary. So as you heard partially there in that video, sometimes he'd say 3 times the amount of a property. Because he's thinking, who cares? I've been lying my whole life on all of these forms. I'm gonna keep on lying and I'm gonna treat everybody as a sucker. Now, if you say, well, yeah, but he eventually paid those loans back, which is actually near miraculous because he almost never does, okay? But he did in this case and no one sued him civilly, etc. So there was no harm. That's not true because if you have higher leverage and collateral, your interest rate's gonna be lower. So you're going to save millions of dollars from that deal that otherwise should have gone to a creditor, right? So there's definitely a harm involved. And so since he was so flagrant about it, if you don't punish him, what you're doing is you're sending a message to everyone else. Yeah, cheat all you want, it doesn't matter.
That's definitely the message and you should.
Yeah, except be careful, guys.
Unless you're an ordinary American citizen, just a normie, don't do it because
don't do it, they'll crush you.
They will rain terror on you. Okay, prosecutors will come for you. Appeals courts will give you the middle finger if they even consider your appeal. We live in a 2-tier justice system. I don't know what else to say. Of course. Let me just give you one statement from Peter Moulton. Hold on, one of the appeals judges who argued this. While harm certainly occurred, it was not the cataclysmic harm that can justify a nearly $500 million award to the state. Okay, fair enough. So what is the liability? $0? What's the justification for that? So I don't know, right now, our government, our country is being looted by the richest people in the world. Okay, just high It's just, I don't know. The robbery never ends. There is no justice. I don't know what else I can comment on in this story. I'm not surprised at all by this.
So, so from time to time I'll say, hey, Trump voters are actually not wrong about X, Y, or Z. And in this case, the fine was excessive, right? But the one thing they're massively wrong about, for sure, I can name many other things too, but is this idea that their exception is being made to target Donald Trump. No, the exception is being made to shield and protect Donald Trump. Because that's why I was jumping into what Anna was saying. Don't do this. Even if you're a normie, don't even come close to doing this. But even if you're wealthy, the very last thing you want to do is try to cheat the banks in America, because the banks have disproportionate power. You want to get arrested? There's one surefire way. Lie even 1%, 0.01% to Goldman Sachs. Oh, you're a goner. They don't care. You could be. I've seen them put away super rich people. I've seen them put away Goldman Sachs workers, former board members, etc. Anyone that touches Goldman Sachs, even like a little scratch, and you go to prison for a long, long time. Okay. The one exception to ripping off banks in America is the Trump exception. Trump is even allowed to rip off the banks, which is amazing.
It's not just Trump. Maybe in regard to committing the level of fraud that Trump was found guilty of committing, right? Maybe in that case. But in terms of engaging in behavior that would typically get an ordinary American, imprisoned, prosecuted as harshly as possible, imprisoned, heavy fines, that same behavior is carried out by people in our political class, in the elite class, and they get away with it. I mean, the prime example, of course, is insider trading, which happens inside Congress on a regular basis with impunity. So we just have to accept the fact that we don't live in the type of country that we learned about in our history books in public schools, okay? We don't live in a country that believes in justice. We don't live in a country that actually believes in equality. We are not governed by the people. We are governed by the corporate elite and by Israel, let's keep it real. That's the reality of our country. And so my question to the American people, regardless of how you identify, which tribe you think you belong to, left or right, do you want to take your country back? Do you want to live in the country that we learned about in our history books? Because that's what I want. I am sick of the powerful looting this country. I am sick of ordinary people, okay, dealing with a government that's more interested in raining terror on them if they step out of line a little bit and want answers to some pretty important questions about why we engage in the foreign policy we engage in, why it is that the wealthiest people pay a far smaller percentage of their income, if you want to call capital gains income, to taxes compared to ordinary hardworking Americans who have to rely on a wage in order to feed their families. That's the country we live in. People think, oh, Anna's red-pilled. I'm not red-pilled, I'm black-pilled. Black-pilled means I look at both parties, I look at our political system, and I look at how Americans get shafted day in and day out. And unless people are serious about changing it, everything else we talk about is a waste of time. That's how I feel.
Get money out of politics, fightcorruption.us. We'll have the link down below. Last thing I'll say is just to be clear, look, the rich can get away with almost everything, but you have to grease the politicians. So like when they do the insider trading on Congress, that doesn't cost the banks anything, that doesn't cost the market anything. In fact, it adds to the market. What it does is it costs the average guy that's investing without that information. So you wind up at a massive disadvantage. So anything that disadvantages the average guy, the people in power love and will protect because they're the ones that are taking advantage of you, right? So you just can't cross Goldman Sachs and the big banks. Now, for the first time, asterisks. Unless you're Donald Trump. Same thing with you can't lose money running a casino. Had to put an asterisk on that one too. Unless you're Donald Trump, right? So be careful. The rules that apply to the super wealthy and connected do not apply to you. They will come down on you like a ton of bricks if you break any of these rules.
All right, well, let's move on to the genocide in the Middle East that we are aiding, abetting, funding. You get the picture. Let's get into it.
Across Gaza, one thing is clear. Israel's military operation is relentless. Now, as Gaza City's 1 million people brace for a new ground offensive, Those who've already fled in search of safety fear even greater catastrophe may be imminent. Witnesses said the IDF struck the Al Munasira camp in Deir al-Balah 3 times today. Some 70 families already living in makeshift homes, now forced to flee once again.
Well, America's special ally has decided to completely ignore international condemnation and overnight launched its offensive against Gaza City with a barrage of strikes. It's the latest move in the Israeli government's conquest and mission to expand as part of the Greater Israel Project. Now, the operation in Gaza City is being referred to as Gideon's Chariot 2. And aside from Gaza City, the Israeli occupation forces bombed Khan Yunis in southern Gaza and Deir al-Balah in the center of the enclave. Now, clearly, Israel has no appetite for peace and has completely ignored the fact that Hamas has in fact accepted a ceasefire deal that is far more favorable to the Israelis than it is to the Palestinians. But nonetheless, Israel said its military had entered the first stages of a planned assault that includes calling up 60,000 reservists. There are also reports that Israel is looking for an additional 10,000 troops and is essentially soliciting for troops on the international stage. So let me just say, if you're an American and you identify as an American and you leave this country to go fight on behalf of Israel's genocide, I don't know if I really want to consider you a fellow American. But nonetheless, Netanyahu is still pretending as though he wants to save the hostages and defeat Hamas, when in reality he wants to expand Israel's borders. He says, quote, "I have come to approve the IDF's plans to take over Gaza City and defeat Hamas. At the same time, I have instructed to begin immediate negotiations on the release of all our hostages and an end to the war on terms acceptable to Israel. These two things, defeating Hamas and releasing our hostages, go hand in hand." That's also just a complete lie. It's not really about getting the hostages back. And I would be, sadly, it would be shocking if the remaining hostages remain alive, because it's not really about saving them. It's not about freeing them. It's about doing whatever it takes to clear that land of the Palestinian people so Israel can snatch it for themselves. Cenk, back to you.
So we're now going from genocide to Holocaust. So we're not there yet. Holocaust is when you try to wipe out everyone in the race, but they're trying to either move or kill 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. So you're gonna see later in the program, it's one of the worst civilian kill ratios in modern history. They're definitely intending to murder the civilians. It's now a full-blown terrorist state. Their civilian kill ratio is way worse than Hamas's, way worse than Bosnia, which was a historic genocide, worse than Sudan, and I can go on, and we will later in the program. So they are intentionally murdering civilians, children. We've got another quote from is the head of the Israeli military directorate, who said that we should kill 50 Palestinians for one Israeli, including their children. So when I see Israelis on TV, etc., defending this genocide, they all look German to me. And they're like, yeah, this is genocide is sehr gut. Mach schnell on killing the Palestinians and removing them from Gaza. Okay, so now these guys are saying, yeah, we're gonna move out the whole million.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is textbook ethnic cleansing, guys, textbook. There's no dispute over it at all. So if you're still supporting Israel, you're supporting a terrorist state, and you should own up to it. You should say, yeah, I like terrorism as long as it helps me. I like that we're murdering the Palestinian children because, hey, then we'll get to take Gaza and we'll have more land. You could just be honest, then at least we could have an honest conversation. But the idea that Israel is not doing terrorism or this is not a genocide is completely over.
So the United Nations body for Palestinian refugees, known as UNRWA, said that nearly 1 in 3 children in Gaza were now malnourished. Intentionally so. I mean, look, Israel defaming UNRWA as a Hamas terrorist organization was very much intentional. Stopped the flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip for literally 3 months. and then follow that with an Israeli-backed organization that's run by American contractors that essentially shoots and kills desperate Palestinians as they go to 3 humanitarian aid hubs. UNRWA was operating hundreds of humanitarian aid hubs in Gaza before they were banned by the Israelis. The Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza said Thursday that 2 people had died due to malnutrition in the past 24 hours, bringing the total to 271. 271 people who have died from malnutrition, from starvation, since Israel launched its assault on the besieged enclave. And there's now also an Israeli paper, I want to be clear, an Israeli paper publishing about some leaked documents from the IDF that finally sheds light on the combatant to civilian ratio. Basically, the number of civilians who have been killed versus the number of Hamas militants that have been killed. And it turns out Israeli army database suggests at least 83% of Gaza dead were civilians. Classified intelligence for May reveals Israel believed it had killed some 8,900 militants in its attacks on Gaza, indicating a proportion of civilian slaughter with few parallels in modern warfare, because this is a genocide. That's what this is. Okay, so this is the IDF's documentation, the IDF's. Okay, the most moral army that we are funding, that we are arming, disgusting. 83% as of May of the people slaughtered in Gaza, civilians. Let me read some excerpts from this piece. Figures obtained from the classified database, which records the deaths of militants from Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, contradict by a huge margin the public statements of Israeli army and government officials throughout the war, which have generally claimed a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratio of civilian to militant casualties. Now, the Israeli army has even confirmed the existence of this database, and it seems like they get away with everything, so they don't really feel the need to deny it or anything. They're acknowledging it. So this was managed by the Military Intelligence Directorate, which also goes by a Hebrew acronym Amman. So the Israeli army believed it had killed around, again, 8,900 operatives since October 7th through May of this year. The deaths of 7,330 of whom were considered certain and 1,570 recorded as probably dead. The vast majority of them were junior, meaning junior combatants, with the army suspecting it had killed 100 to 300 senior Hamas operatives out of a total of 750 named in the database. Now, taking the militant casualty figures obtained from the internal Israeli army database in May and lining them up against the health ministry's total death toll, it is possible to calculate an approximate civilian casualty ratio for the war up until 3 months ago, when the death toll stood at 53,000. So in other words, again, as we had suspected, the vast majority of those who have been killed in Gaza by the Israeli occupation forces were in fact civilians. And by the way, the Gaza Health Ministry's numbers is an undercount because it doesn't consider the bodies that are still trapped under the rubble. There are hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza that are missing right now. And I think it's pretty safe to presume those individuals are dead. So we don't know what the exact death toll is at the moment, but even the IDF acknowledges in their own internal database that, again, the vast majority of people they have killed are in fact civilians, and I think that's intentional.
Of course it's intentional, and then, we've told you before, American doctors talking about sniper shots on kids under the age of 5, an unbelievable number of them. They were literally bombing and razing all of the buildings and homes in Gaza. I mean, if this is unintentional, I mean, why would you pay people to destroy every building in Gaza if it's unintentional? Like, none of it makes any sense. Look, so let's break this down one by one. First of all, I mentioned some historic genocides before. Let me give you more. The butcher of Damascus, Bashar al-Assad, just annihilated Aleppo early on in the civil war. It was just grotesque. The civilian kill ratio there was 59%. Israel's is 83%, okay? And that's 83% is low because it doesn't count anyone under the rubble. It is a massive undercount according to the Lancet Journal, one of the top medical journals in the world. But even if you take that number, and the number of people that they killed that are theoretically Hamas fighters is also high. There's about 1,700 of them that they say are probably dead. So we're giving them the probably dead, right? Because this is from a leak from IDF itself, right? So you give them all that and they still get to 83% now. But of course, nothing as bad as the barbaric terrorists of Hamas. Because on October 7th, their civilian kill ratio, a little bit of dispute around civilians and military around the edges, so the number can't be pinpointed exactly, but it is between 60 and 67%. Wait a minute. That's way lower than Israel's kill ratio. So now Israel's civilian kill ratio much higher than the terrorist group Hamas, and they have now done 60 October 7ths at a bare minimum. 60. So when that military director guy in Israel said we should kill 50 civilians for one Israeli and murder their children too, it was an undercount. They've now gone to 60, and that's before they annihilate Gaza City, which started today, okay? So look, that's why I'm telling you, genocide is now beginning to be too mild a term. It appears that they're trying to wipe out all the Palestinians in Gaza, and that would be very much historic. There's only really one other time that's happened, and of course, ironically, it happened to the Jews in Germany. In terms of the caloric intake and the starvation that they're doing, obviously also shows intent. But did you know that before October 7th, Israel was already managing the caloric intake of Gaza?
I did know that actually.
And what's funny is that they say like, oh no, we left Gaza. We left it. We control Gaza? No, not at all. No, they have the border closed. They have checkpoints. Anyone that approaches the wall without permission gets murdered, literally. 150 people murdered in a peaceful protest in 2018. And they control Gaza completely. All the medical aid, the food, even before October 7th. You know why? Because it's a despotic and dictatorial occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. You know, when people say, oh, why should we support Israel? They say, oh, it's the only democracy in the Middle East. That's a giant lie. I mean, what kind of a democracy is like, yeah, democracy for us, but we keep 5.5 million prisoners. And they have no rights at all, and we can kill them at any time. And we control how much food they're allowed to eat, and when we want to, we starve them to death. By the way, 266 Gazans have already starved to death, 122 of them are children. So when you're starving people to death, you don't get to say it's unintentional. No, this is act of global terrorism, state terrorism, and a maniacal genocide. And at this point, anyone denying it is basically declaring, I don't think Palestinians are human. I think the Israelis are superior to the Palestinians, and we can murder them all we want. It doesn't matter. We'll just get our dogs in American media and in American politics to call them terrorists and to call us a democracy and a moral army. I'll give you two more examples from the story from great story from this Israeli outlets, Plus 972 magazine and The Guardian. So this is how the Israelis count. So they went and killed 200 areas. This is in their own documentation. 200 people, and they say they were all terrorists. Then an officer is like, only 10 of them were terrorists. The other 190 were civilians. But count them all as terrorists, okay? In another instance, 100 people killed. They say 100 of them were terrorists. An officer says only 2 of them were. The other 98 were civilians. But count them all as terrorists. And still you get to 83%. Okay, so yeah. No, if you're denying that it's intentional, you're purposely lying and you're aiding and abetting genocide. So that's where we are now. So if you raise your hand and say, I still support Israel doing this, you're a bit of a monster.
All right, when we come back, I want to just briefly touch on the thousands of new settlements in the West Bank in an effort to prevent the formation of a Palestinian state, which has been the goal from the very beginning, and what the Trump administration is trying to do in silencing dissent. Come right back.
right, back on TYT. Let's go to Super Chat. Majid writes in, given continuous expansion of settlements in the West Bank, the international community must pressure Israel via BDS to give Palestinians a sovereign state, or B, citizenship, i.e. one state, one or the other. Yeah, no, if you're France, Australia, and so many, UK are now leading towards recognizing Palestine as a state. Of course, Netanyahu is going nuts, going, anti-Semite, anti-Semite. If you don't agree with murdering and slaughtering Palestinian children, then you're an anti-Semite and you're the hateful one. You hate all Jews if you won't murder Palestinian children. That's his logic, not mine. I despise that logic. Titan says, oh my God, Anna, I just said before the show, we don't have a government for the people. Our government is a tool being used by the rich to loot. Even in the face of decline and collapse, they continue looting the country for everything. But you're totally right, Titan. But what you have to understand is because I went to some good schools and for other reasons, I know a lot of wealthy folks, and they have no idea of the decay. They think everything's great. They don't know why the rest of you are complaining so much. They're like, the stock market's at a record high. We couldn't be doing any better. I know, you couldn't be doing any better because you're very wealthy. But they can't see, they're totally blind. And if you tell them that people in America are suffering, they're like, that sounds ridiculous. I don't know anyone like that. They drive me crazy. In Liberty and Guns We Trust says, it's sad to say, but Israel is engaged in actual human sacrifices because greater Israel is their goal and it's rooted in religion. Palestinians are their human sacrifice to achieve their religious ends. So look, I don't know about human sacrifice and I don't know about religious parts of it and stuff. By the way, a lot of folks who believe in Judaism think that it is against their religion to form a state like this. And so it's not just ultra-Orthodox. There are other Jews who are like, no, you're now mixing religion and government, and that's terrible because governments do terrible things. Oh, right, exactly what happened to Israel, right? So now you're endangering all Jews because this government is pretending to represent all Jews and is doing the most maniacal, terrible things we've ever seen. So it doesn't help anyone. It certainly doesn't help Jews across the world. Independent Conversation says, I'm with Anna, hoping hell is real accountability.
Yeah, for real. I mean, yeah. That's the sad state that we're in.
Yep.
Yeah.
On YouTube member section, Box says Anna's extra spicy today, and they enjoy it.
I'll tell you why I'm extra spicy today. Because when things are documented by our own intelligence organizations, like the FBI, for instance, and people want to gaslight you into thinking that the 5 Israelis who were reported on 9/11 actually didn't exist at all, and if you bring it up, you're anti-Semitic. Don't gaslight me. Don't gaslight me. I'm not accusing my audience of doing that, obviously, but all the Israel defenders, you need to have an argument. You need to come at me with substance. If you can't refute what I'm saying with substance, other than, oh my God, tinfoil hat, you're an anti-Semite, that's not an argument.
Tons of Israeli spies were arrested after 9/11.
Yes.
And they were let go. They went back to Israel. Why? When you arrest a spy, what country sends them back? Goes, oh, thank you for spying on us. Yeah. We're owned. It's obvious. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Jay Cross, Gia Lee, Millie Bunn, and Manny Fresh. They all just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. We appreciate you guys. You could also do it through tyt.com/join. Check out tyt.com/press too for all of our interviews. Did a really good one with Brian Tyler Cohen this morning with Richard Ojeda. Check that one out when we put it up. CDN Norse Dog Dad gifted a membership on YouTube. We appreciate all of you. Anna, what's next?
All right, let's get to our next story. One of the biggest pieces of evidence that Israel's assault on the Palestinian people in Gaza has nothing to do with returning the hostages or defeating Hamas is the fact that ever since October 7th happened, Israel has allowed its terrorist settlers to rain terror on the Palestinian people in the West Bank, which has never been governed by Hamas. The West Bank had nothing to do with the atrocities committed on October 7th. Yet it turns out that Israel has announced that they will be building thousands of new illegal settlements. And there's a very specific reason why they're doing that other than stealing land. Let's take a look.
The decision has delighted far-right Israeli ministers who support Benjamin Netanyahu needs to stay in power. They see it as their means to end the prospect of a Palestinian state, showing up here to say as much just last week.
We will continue to build a fulfilling Jewish reality. This reality definitively buries the idea of a Palestinian state.
The reason this issue is so central to the future of a Palestinian state is because we have East Jerusalem here with Ramallah to the north and Bethlehem there to the south. And Israel would put a brand new settlement right here, smack in the middle, separating those two cities from each other.
So in other words, in an effort to further prevent the possibility of the formation of a Palestinian state, they're making a point to build these illegal settlements right smack dab in the middle of the West Bank, which would divide the enclave in half on purpose. Okay, so this has been the plan all along, guys. Can we please, for the love of God, stop with the dog and pony show? Stop repeating and regurgitating the lies of the Israeli government and Benjamin Netanyahu. This has never been about protecting the Israeli people from Hamas. This has never been about, ensuring that October 7th never happens again. This is the Greater Israel Project happening in real time with the United States paying for it in blood and in treasure. So my question to the American people is, what do you care more about? Building some other country's empire or taking care of our own people? Because it disgusts me that we support these people. We should not be supporting these people.
Of course not. So we cut off aid to almost every other nation when Trump first came in, and including programs that helped save lives through funding AIDS prevention, treatment, malaria, etc. Right? So we said, no, we're not gonna. We don't have a dollar to even save kids' lives abroad. Right? The only country we didn't cut off aid to was Israel and its allies, Egypt and Jordan, because they work with the Israeli government. Okay, so now they say we don't have money to help anyone, but we do have the money to help Israel commit a genocide.
You better watch out, Egypt and Jordan. They're coming for you next.
Of course they are.
Be good boys and kneel to your daddies, okay, over in Israel, and get ready for them to steal some of your land. I hope you're ready.
No, but the Egyptian people and the Jordanian people are not in favor of it. It's their
government.
It's their deeply corrupt governments who are on their knees every day to the Israeli leaders. But to be fair to those leaders, so are our American leaders.
Yeah.
Trump and Biden have spent the entire time on their knees. And so they say, I mean, Biden pretended that he cared about the Palestinians as he wrote a $20 billion check to Israel to finish them off. Like, no one has helped this genocide more than Joe Biden. So even Trump, in his infinite madness and his despicable actions in this regard, basically greenlighting the genocide, greenlighting the division of the West Bank, he didn't send as much money to Israel in the middle of a genocide as Joe Biden did. Okay, now, if you think Biden and Trump are terrible, you're absolutely right. They're the bottom of the barrel. They work for Israel, they're disgusting. And our Congress agrees with them nearly 100%, okay? So here give you an example. Because a lot of people in the rest of the world might not know that the American people have already flipped. They might think that we are represented by our politicians because we're a democracy. That's not remotely true. 58% of Americans say not only should we not give money to Israel, we should recognize Palestine as a state, right? 58%. Now, do you know how many members of Congress agree with that position? 2%. So wait a minute, 6 out of 10 Americans want us to recognize Palestine because Americans are good, decent people. They go, those are human beings. Why should they be the only people in the world who can't have sovereignty and independence in a state? I mean, what an outrageously racist position to say, no, the Palestinians are so subhuman, so violent that we can't give them a state. Well, if that's true, then Israel shouldn't have a state because Israel is much more violent than the Palestinians, much more violent than Hamas. That's not even close.
How many countries has Israel bombed since October 7th? I mean, literally, like.
I lost count, I'm not kidding. I lost count. And it depends on how you count. Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, Iran, Iraq,
yes,
Syria. Okay, so like they bombed all their neighbors. And the morons on American television say, well, to be fair, they're not stupid, they're just corrupt. They go, no, Israel is doing self-defense. They had to attack all of their neighbors for self-defense. And so now the only grain of truth in that is that the Israelis at this point are so sociopathically paranoid that they think until everyone else is neutered and no one could dare to even criticize us, we're not safe, we don't feel safe. We don't feel safe. You have to kill more Palestinians, you have to take their land, you have to bomb 7 countries, otherwise I don't feel safe. Unless every one of my so-called enemies that I declared enemies, and the people I want to take their land, unless they're all dead, I don't feel safe. Well, that's how fascists think. So to give you a sense of, and is it working, by the way? So Israel's killed 83% civilian kill ratio. We discussed that earlier in the show. One of the worst in human history. So it's obviously intentional. So they killed, if their numbers are right, 8,800 members of Hamas, roughly. Do you know how many people have signed up for Hamas since October 7th? 15,000, about double the number. I'm shocked it's not 150,000. Right? Because they're like, oh, Israel's murdering all of us. They killed my kids. So what am I gonna do? Just sit here? Of course I'm gonna join a resistance. And of course, in American television, they'll tell you the Palestinians have no right to defend themselves. If they even lift a finger against Israel, terrorists, anti-Semites. You should know that your job is to get murdered by the Israelis and never ever resist. But if Israel kills you at 60 times the rate of Hamas, which they have, they're lovely and human, moral. They're the gorgeous army. And they have every right to murder your kids as long as they want. By the way, they've murdered 500 times the number of children that Hamas has. 500 times worse than Hamas. These are indisputable facts. So that's why you get a wall of propaganda. One more thing here, Anna. I don't know that a single cable news anchor in America has called it a genocide yet. Isn't that amazing?
Look, they're a disgrace, okay, to the field of journalism. They don't do journalism. They just serve as mouthpieces for the powerful. And that's why no one trusts them. That's why you have this explosion of independent media, which Prime Minister Netanyahu is desperately trying to take advantage of to do positive PR for Israel. But how do you do positive PR for Israel when you see unending images of children with their limbs amputated? When you see children, skin and bones, dying of malnutrition. When you see people literally getting shot at as they're desperately trying to get food at humanitarian aid hubs. When you see aerial images of Gaza leveled, every house, every apartment building, every university, every hospital, every refugee camp gone. You can't do positive PR, Israel, because this whole situation that's been happening for nearly 2 years has opened the eyes of so many people who actually initially were on your side. They are their own worst enemies. And you wanna know something? If this is what it's gonna take for Americans to finally wake up and understand our government is occupied by Israel, it is not in our best interest to remain allies of this country, the better it is, because we need to decouple from Israel. I think Israel right now is one of the biggest threats to the United States.
Of course.
Full stop.
I mean, they got us into endless wars in the Middle East to fight their stupid wars for them to help them take land. They've robbed us of $310 billion. They say we owe them.
We don't owe you.
What do we owe you for? Are you nuts?
No, and by the way, for all the people in this country, whether they're Israeli or whatever, who are diehard fanatics for the state of Israel, you know what? God bless you. Go live in Israel.
Yeah, get out of here.
Why are you in America? Why are you in America if you love Israel so much? Go live in Israel. In fact, more importantly, they desperately need 10,000 additional members for their military. Go fight. But sitting here and demanding that the American people bankroll the slaughter of innocents in the Middle East, I'm not just stopping at Gaza or the West Bank. This is gonna expand further. This is endless. Thinking that the American people should be responsible and should have, blood on their hands in support of Israel is absolutely disgusting. I would like our country and our government to look out for our people, not a foreign government that's currently committing unspeakable atrocities. We got to take a break, Cenk. We'll be right back.
This is amazing. Now people are writing in saying they're offended as Germans. Okay, watch. German Alma writes in, Cenk, sorry, but I'm offended. Most Germans, my parents were some of them, 16 and 18 years of age in 1945, did not know about the killings. They were aware of imprisonment, relocations, etc., but the murders were hidden from the general population. So they're saying actually the Israelis are worse because the Israelis do know. They definitely know. A lot of the Germans didn't know. But I'm not referring to the general German population now or even then. I'm referring to the German propagandists like Goebbels who came out and were like, no, there are no concentration camps and the Jews deserved it. By the way, the same thing that the Israelis say. There is no genocide, but the Palestinians deserve it. I mean, you could take Goebbels and Netanyahu's statements and you'd replace Jews with Palestinians and Israel with Germany. I'm not sure you could tell the difference. So Pseudo Dragon says, I hate Cenk calling Israelis German. There was a lot more dissent and opposition among the German people. And unlike the Israelis, the German people didn't know the full extent of the regime's crimes. I mean, this is amazing. We've gotten to a point where people are saying, and they have facts to back them up.
I don't know if I'm buying that the German people didn't know the full extent of the crimes being committed.
No, but Anna, to be fair, okay, now look, I've gone to the Holocaust museums, etc., right? And so you see some of the movies that they put out, etc. So for sure, tons of people knew, right? But I've also seen, and I've read a lot about the Holocaust and other genocides. So, and number one, back then there wasn't the media that there is today. So there's no smartphones, there's not even mainstream media. All the media was run by the Nazi government. And the Nazi government was denying the Holocaust the entire time. Kind of like the Israelis are denying the genocide the whole time, but except now there's a swarm of media, right? And I read the story of this Swiss businessman who risked his life to tell the rest of the world about the concentration camps that he saw and the gas chambers, right? He was horrified and he risked his life to get that news to the Americans, okay? So there was a huge lockdown on what was actually happening in Germany. Whereas in Israel, we've shown you the videos. The citizens go, yeah, we're killing their babies. So what? We're killing their babies. I mean, we've shown you the videos. They're ecstatic about it. So no, the Jewish supremacy thought that they have in Israel is not anything I've seen in America. It's just ludicrous, insanity. They've lost their minds. Concept of a username says, one thing that really truly upsets me is the fact that these people in power, the rich, think that we're blind and stupid. When it comes to robberies that they are committing, they actually think we're oblivious and can't see the money transfer from the bottom to the top. Their bubble is impervious to facts, which can all seem clear as day. Their arrogance and inflated sense of their own intelligence is frankly insulting. Yes, that's definitely true. Because to be fair to them, before they had mainstream media, 100% locked up. I'm not just talking about Israel, I'm talking about the corporate donors, the elites, etc. So they could lie to you 24/7 and totally get away with it. They're unfamiliar with social media. They're like, oh, we gotta shut it down. We gotta shut it down. They're so angry about it. In fact, we have a story about how Netanyahu now wants to control the algorithms because they're used to lying to you your whole life and they're outraged they can't do it anymore. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Box, thank you for upgrading through the join button. We appreciate it, brother. And Omni Aldous, thank you for gifting 10 memberships on YouTube. We appreciate that as well. Guys, defy the Israeli government, defy American politicians and American media, become a member of the Young Turks. Anna.
All right. Let's get to our next story. It appears that the Trump administration, Trump's State Department in particular, has listened to demands and orders from their masters and have fired a top official for advising the administration to come out against ethnic cleansing in Gaza. The crime of, advising the United States government to come out against ethnic cleansing. Wow, what a baddie. Now, the man in question is Shahid Qureshi, who was the top press officer for Israel-Palestinian affairs at the State Department. Monday's firing occurred days after an internal debate about releasing a statement to the news media that said, "We do not support forced displacement of Palestinians in Gaza." Shahid Qureshi drafted the line, what a big crime, which resembled previous remarks made by President Donald Trump and Middle East Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who said in February that the United States would not pursue an eviction plan for Gaza. But since then, it appears that that whole Epstein files cover-up thing happened. There was some sort of talking to Donald Trump, and he did kind of like a 180 in his willingness to push back against Israel time to time. Now he doesn't push back on anything, and in fact will fire members of his own administration if they don't go along with Israel's lies in support of the ethnic cleansing and genocide currently taking place in Gaza. So it's coming up again now because of reports that these Israeli, officials are considering expelling and just ethnically cleansing Palestinians to South Sudan. So they're having conversations with other countries, essentially to see if these other countries will absorb Palestinian refugees, and South Sudan happens to be one of them. But denouncing ethnic cleansing was too far for the State Department. And so as a result, the State Department vetoed the move, instructing officials to cut the line marked in red and clear, according to a memo dated last week. And this isn't the first dispute of this kind in recent weeks. So another occurred earlier this month after Israel killed Al Jazeera journalist Anas al-Sharif and several other journalists in Gaza City, for that matter, as officials contemplated how the State Department should address the incident. Qureshi recommended including a line that said, "We mourn the loss of journalists and express condolences to their families." State Department leadership objected in an email sent August 10th, quote, "No response is needed," the email said. "We can't be sending out condolences if we are unsure of the individual's actions." He was a journalist who was literally on air every single day. Kind of hard to engage in terrorist activities when you are on the air, on camera every single day. Besides which, Israel didn't provide any evidence that Anas al-Sharif was a Hamas militant, because they don't need to provide any evidence. All they need to do is point to anyone, particularly humanitarian aid workers, journalists, things like that, accuse them of being Hamas militants, slaughter them, and enjoy the impunity that the United States offers them for doing these crimes. It's disgusting. It goes against what our values are supposed to be in this great American democracy. And Israel at this point is not only a liability to the United States, but completely ruins the possibility of our government being taken seriously when issues of human rights abuses come up on the international stage. Who are we to talk about human rights abuses or the necessity of following international law when we have allowed our special ally to get away with literal murder? Cenk, back to you.
Yeah, so there's people who basically work for Israel all over our government, and they make these decisions in a way that is not really authorized, even within the Trump administration. So if you're looking at this Qureshi guy and you're thinking, well, I mean, I don't know, maybe he snuck in, he's some sort of soft-hearted lib or something. No, he's the one that wrote the tweet for Marco Rubio about making Gaza beautiful again. Okay, so he's on their side, et cetera, but nothing is ever good enough. So if you say, hey, the official US policy is that we are not in favor of ethnic cleansing, they're like, that's it, you're fired. But wait, I'm repeating official US policy. Yeah, but we work for Israel, we don't work for America, so you're fired. How could you get fired for stating official US policy if you're in the State Department? You know why? Because the fish rots from the head down, in this case, not Trump, although he's plenty bad, but Rubio. So Rubio, the article talks about the 7th floor and how the 7th floor basically works for Israel. That's Rubio's floor. And so Rubio's taking over $1 million from AIPAC, deeply connected to Miriam Adelson and the other Israeli lobby. And we told you that when he was brought in, number one, that he was part of Team Israel, along with several other members like Mike Huckabee and others. And that is why the Senate voted overwhelmingly yes on Marco Rubio. They're like, oh, the others, we have issues. Tulsi Gabbard, others, we will look into. They're like, oh, Rubio, he works for Israel. He's in right away. So he's the Israeli Secretary of State, not ours. And so he won't even do US policy. He's like, no, I'm going to do Israeli policy instead of US. It's unbelievable. All right, so there's a guy inside there who is going around firing people and changing the language in favor of Israel. Within the State Department, his name is David Milstein. And so Milstein is one of the guys who got Qureshi fired. He's so nuts, he tried to put in an official statement that not to call the West Bank and Gaza Strip by their real names, but call them Judea and Samaria. Judea and Samaria are like the names that Israel uses for greater Israel, meaning we're gonna wipe out the Palestinians and literally steal that land for ourselves.
They say it out loud, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, that should be official US policy. Complete and utter ethnic cleansing, genocide, maybe even a Holocaust to steal that land, and we should call it by the same name. Saying Judea and Samaria is the equivalent of saying from the river to the sea, okay? So you wanna know who David Milstein is? He is the son-in-law of Mark Levin. So Mark Levin gets some sort of honorary title. He gets to put in son-in-law in the State Department. And of course, there's one other character, you're not gonna be surprised, who called for Qureshi's firing, Laura Loomer. So they're Israeli, I mean, technically I don't know if they're agents, assets, or they're just doing it voluntarily. But let's put it this way, Israel firsters like Laura Loomer, Mark Levin, his son-in-law, Marco Rubio, and by the way, almost all of Congress who's gotten paid by AIPAC and other Israeli lobbies, and they don't work for our government at all. They often defy our own government to serve Israel instead. Yeah. That's the state of America. So look, the one upside of all that is that we now know how it feels to be a Palestinian. You're now occupied. I can't wait for Israel to start controlling our caloric intake. And telling us what, well, they already tell us what we can and can't do and what we can and can't say.
So look, the State Department didn't give any rationale for Qureshi's firing to the Washington Post or to Qureshi himself, by the way, but he's confident his pushback on the administration's allegiance to Israel was the culprit and says the following: despite a strong reputation and close working relationship with many of my colleagues, I was unable to survive these disputes. And he was subject to an attack from none other than that lunatic known as Laura Loomer, who called him a pro-Iranian regime jihadi Muslim tied to NIAC.
Well, of course she did. She calls everybody that.
Okay, referring to the National Iranian American Council, which backed the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, which prevented Iran from building nuclear weapons. So why is that a bad thing exactly? Anyway, Qureshi said he interned at the NIAC back in 2013. She also called him a rabidly anti-Trump staffer who was operating as a pro-Iranian regime operative. Like,
they just say
there's a lunatic right now who has the president's ear. But honestly, I don't know how much it's really about Trump trusting Laura Loomer. I think at the heart of this issue is something happened, right? Because there was a period of time, even in Trump's second term, where he was willing to push back on Israel at least a little bit, right?
Yes.
He stopped attacking the Houthis. There was something else I'm forgetting at the moment.
He did a peace deal, temporary hostage deal with Hamas.
That's right.
Cut out Israel from it.
Cut out Israel, exactly.
Cut out his Israel from the Houthis deal. And he made them turn around their jets when they were going to do a second wave of bombing of Iran. So 3 separate times he defied Israel. And that's where we gave him credit and we had a little bit of hope. Oh my God, is this a US president? That's actually a US president? For all the other things we disagree Trump on massively, we're like, okay, I haven't seen a US president stand up to Israel in my lifetime. And then Netanyahu came over, had a private talk with Trump.
Yes.
And from then on, He has been nothing but, yes, sir, of course, sir. Kill anyone you like, sir. Here's a check, sir. Yes, take Gaza, sir. Please destroy every Palestinian in Gaza, sir. I'm so sorry. Epstein files will never be released. There were no clients. Oh, okay. All right, well, I mean, look, they're super obvious. And Laura Loomer called this Qureshi guy pro-Iranian regime operative, right? No, the irony is it's always projection. There's a bunch of people who are pro-Israel regime operatives.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Laura Loomer and Mark Levin and tons of people inside our own government. You wanna know who the deep state is? It's people who are working for Israel instead of America. There, I just solved it for you.
That's right. Anyway, we gotta take a break, but when we come back for the second hour, man, we have so many good stories today. We're gonna talk about Wesley Bell, the congressman who replaced Cori Bush. And remember, the reason why he won is because he had a tremendous amount of support from the Israel lobby. Well, that's now coming back to bite him in the ass.
No, it's not. He loves it, and it's not gonna hurt him at all. He's like almost dancing up there. I love Israel. Commit more genocide. Woo! Send me the money. Send me the money. So we'll tell you about that prostitute when we return. I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think, my dad's Oldsmobile. And I parked it in a place where there was two cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots, I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all three cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh and this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the third car, okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like, I went, okay, for this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow, there's a B?
Yeah, I'm like, I hit 3 cars. I don't know, so you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so one, my bad, really sorry about that. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't wanna keep hitting your cars, and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Now baby, move that fat, baby, move that fat. Out.
Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on.
Favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
James and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says,
people who support us on the internet. That's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning. They seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you, guys.
I took my cognitive exam already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take.
Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Adam Momtaz. Adam, thanks for joining, brother. Appreciate it. You can also join through tyt.com/join. Real quick, guys, before we get to the rest of the news, we've been telling you about this because we think it could save you a lot of money. So there are millions of seniors that are on the wrong Medicare plan. And I don't want that to happen to you guys. If you use the right broker, in our case, we think it's Chapter. We did the research on it. The rest of the industry is super shady, but Chapter's done a really great job. That you can save you can save on average $1,100. So they don't work for big insurance. They're independent. They work for you. And a lot of the other companies are just recommending the people giving them the highest commission, which is super cheesy. And Chapter does not do that. They find the best plan for you. So call them today, 805-201-2275, 805-201-2275. And it only takes about 20 minutes to review your plan and give you the best recommendation. Askchapter.org/TYT is another way of doing it. Askchapter.org/TYT. All right, Anna, what's next?
This is next. Take a look.
We don't take the questions. We're saying, I'll answer that question too. There was an attack, and I'm not even talking about it October 7th. I'll go back, if you want to talk about the history, where when the UN established Israel, the Arab countries who were in charge of that Palestinian, which was not Palestine at the time, who were controlling that area, attacked Israel.
Congressman Wesley Bell, a Democrat, was confronted by furious protesters at his town hall just last night over his unwavering support for the terrorist country of Israel. And I say terrorist country because they're currently carrying out the ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza and building additional illegal settlements in the West Bank, which they intend to annex. Now, keep in mind that this is the guy, Wesley Bell, who ousted former Congresswoman Cori Bush with the help of AIPAC, the Israel lobby. So the super PAC United Democracy Project spent $8.5 million to oust Bush, and clearly they succeeded. Democratic Majority for Israel PAC also spent $500,000. And Democratic donor Reid Hoffman's Mainstream Democrats PAC spent $1.5 million in support of Bell. Now, an attendee at this town hall pressed him on his alliance with AIPAC, telling the crowd that he's accepted millions of dollars from them, and here's how Bell responded.
There are interest groups in clean energy. There are interest groups in reproductive health rights who are doing God's work, and that's their issue. AIPAC's issue is the American-Israeli relationship. That's it. They're an interest group. That's their issue. You asked the question, so now I'm going to answer. There's this propaganda going around, and so what AIPAC is donors all across the country who decide to use the portal to donate to show that they support the American-Israeli, relationship. That's what they do. Now when we're trying to say that these different interest groups cannot participate in our government, I disagree. I think everybody should be able to participate.
So that man up there debasing himself is a Democrat. I just want to remind you all, because we still engage in like the performative nonsense that we have two options. We have the right and the left, the Democrats and the Republicans, and they're so different from each other on everything except the issues that matter the most, foreign policy and the economy. He also responded to attendees who were accusing him of being complicit in a genocide, arguing, you know what, I just don't see it that way.
About the word genocide, because we see that differently. When it comes to the word genocide, I kind of disagree with it because the bottom line is Israel was attacked by an openly genocidal terrorist group. How do you get around that? Everyone has to get over this one. How do you get around that? They were attacked. Hamas said openly that they were to destroy Israel openly. And so if you're accusing somebody of genocide, you're standing with an organization that says they want to commit genocide. You don't see that? I just think it's a little hypocritical.
So just to ensure that you all heard that very, very last part, because it is difficult to hear what he's saying with people rightly screaming over him for being an embarrassment to this country and to the Democratic Party. He said that if you accuse Israel of committing genocide, you're standing with Hamas. So in order to not stand with Hamas, you need to greenlight Israel's genocide, of course. What a clown, what a complete and utter embarrassment to this country. So Maxi Glamour, who attended the town hall, said Bell's answer didn't acknowledge the truth. I'm just gonna read one quote. Here's what the attendee says. Wesley Bell wanted to argue for semantics so that he can have some ethical, moral standing ground that his complicitness isn't perpetuating the genocide, and he really failed on showing the community that he cared about it. Well, him and almost every other member of Congress. Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on Tommy Bell. So let's go through some numbers. He said, well, Hamas is an openly genocidal group. So let's take the most numbers most friendly to Israel. Hamas has killed, on October 7th, killed 67% of the people they killed were civilians. Terrible, disgusting. And that's why we call them a terrorist group and have been opposed to them from day one, right? Israel, according to a report today from Plus 972 magazine in Israel and in The Guardian from an IDF leak, has killed 83% of the people that they've killed in Gaza are civilians. So they have a far worse civilian kill ratio than Hamas does. They also have a worse civilian kill ratio than Assad does, than the genocide in Bosnia. I can go on. By the way, the Russians, Vladimir Putin, terrible. I can't believe they invaded Ukraine. Dead set against it. Their civilian kill ratio in Ukraine is 10%. Israel's in Gaza is 83%.
According to the IDF's own documentation and files, yep.
Okay, so if Hamas is a terrible genocidal organization that, as he's claiming, no problem, agreed. Well, then Israel is clearly worse. And you know the numbers I'm going to tell you. Israel has killed 60 times the number of civilians as Hamas did. Israel has killed 500 times the number of children that Hamas did. So if Hamas is as disgusting as Tommy Bell says, then obviously Israel is way worse, right? But, I left out a number. How much did the Israeli lobby spend to get Wesley Bell elected over Cori Bush? $8.5 million. So that's why he's dancing up there for them, okay? So as I've been telling you the last couple of weeks, now when I see Israeli officials on TV, I feel like I'm looking at German officials from World War II era. Yeah, we are treating everyone very well, mach schnell, right? And so now when I see these corrupt politicians, I'm like seeing lipstick and fishnet stockings on them because they're prostitutes. So this, I mean, I have no respect for Tommy Bell. Okay, none, zero, less than zero. So don't tell me, no, a Democrat vote blue no matter who. So here's a prostitute for Israel. Everybody give him money. Everybody give him your votes. No, you should never, ever vote for Tommy Bell. Okay.
Or anyone who's taking money from the Israel lobby, honestly. Look, we're in my opinion, we're in a dire situation, okay? Because it has become very clear to me. I mean, one of the biggest examples that our government isn't working for us and is letting Israelis literally do things that not only harm people in the Middle East, but harm us here in America, was with what happened with that cybersecurity official from Israel who tried to have sex with a child in our own country, tried to rape a 15-year-old, he thought was a 15-year-old. Turns out it was a sting operation. He gets caught in said sting operation by the FBI, by the feds, gets charged, but is allowed to go home to Israel, where they put him on leave in this government agency he works in. But as soon as we look away, he'll be right back at work.
It doesn't
if
matter.
He's not
it's
back
a
at work
vacation
already.
anyway.
He tried to have sex with children in our country. And our government said, see you later, it's totally fine. Essentially sending a message to all the other pedophiles in Israel that they can come and do that kind of tourism here. Take advantage of our children and then leave, not have to worry about any consequences.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, it occurred to me for the first time, there's a second problem. In that Vegas case, they caught 8 potential pedophiles. They were all trying to rape kids in this country. 7 of them are Americans, so they'll face justice. One is an Israeli that Anna mentioned, so obviously he's free to go because you can do anything you like to Americans as long as you're Israeli. And Wesley Bell will put on bells and dance for you. I'm sorry, Tommy Bell. And you'll go, oh yeah, well of course the Israelis should be allowed to rape our kids. Of course, send me more money, send me more money. Oh yeah.
To say otherwise.
Yeah, Joe, you're an anti-Semite if you don't let them rape our kids. You're an anti-Semite. You have to let them rape, okay? So, but what occurred to me, Anna, is that when they go to trial, the other 7 rapists are gonna go, why am I in prison? That guy's free to go. If what we did is no problem and the American government let one of us go, why should we go to prison? And unfortunately, that's gonna be an excellent defense.
He told, okay, this is Tom Alexandrovich. He told the police that he comes to the United States often. Every 3 to 5 months, he comes to the United States. How many times has he in the past succeeded in having sex with minors in the United States?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. How often does he or other Israeli government officials use America for sexual tourism? So, but it doesn't matter. As I told you earlier in the show, 58% of Americans want Palestine to be a state. Only 2% of Congress does. And I mean, look, everybody on cable news, you have to just pick one, okay? You're either a blithering idiot that doesn't know anything about politics, or you're lying to your audience on purpose. Because obviously these donors control our politicians. And as we've told you a billion times, it's not just AIPAC in Israel, it's big oil, big pharma, etc. And every dumbass news reporter or anchor or journalist on cable news is like, no, they don't. Our politicians are wonderful. Our politicians are noble. They're having debates.
Okay, so
right? Come on. No. The money doesn't affect them. The money doesn't affect them. In fact, if you say that money, the $8.5 million that Israeli lobby put into that race so that Tommy Bell can win and sleep in the house, so they will tell you no. If you mention that, you're an anti-Semite.
No, I know. If you mention anything that hurts Israel's feelings, you're an anti-Semite. I got it. Even if it's based in fact, even if it's based on things that have been documented by our own government agencies. But just quickly going back to the reaction that Bell was confronted with by his own constituents during this town hall. The event ended with security guards and police essentially getting into physical altercations with the protesters who wouldn't leave. And what I think is so fascinating is that they suffered harsher consequences than a child rapist from Israel who was allowed to flee back to his country after getting caught in a sting operation. Now, what am I talking about? Well, here's a video from one constituent who filmed some of the assaults, and at the end, you see him get thrown to the ground himself. Let's watch. So, Nice government we have here.
Yeah.
By the people, for the people, am I right?
Yeah, the Saul Gilst quote, I gotta read it for you guys. So first of all, you see the thugs paid by Israel roughing up American citizens for daring to ask about a genocide that Israel's committing. Okay, some Americans have raised their heads, batter them. Yeah, of course, right away, sir. What did he smash that woman's face into the wall?
Yeah, grabbed her, grabbed her by the hair and tossed her around.
Okay, hey, US Congress, how much has Israel paid you today? Anyway, so Saul is a wonderful American, and he's explained, while he claims to represent us, referring to Bell, while he claims to be fighting anti-Semitism, while he claims to speak for the Jewish community here is angry. The Jewish community here is firm in its stance against genocide. I think this was the first time that that really got to be said clearly to him. So guys, get a load of this, and this is why we told you 1,000 times. This isn't about Jews, this isn't about religion, this is about Jewish Americans, etc. Right? So here are Jewish Americans going and saying, "Can you please stop funding the genocide?" And Wesley Bell goes, "No, you're an anti-Semite for opposing Israel. Smash your head against the wall." Okay? How dare you Jewish Americans be opposed to Israel? Bow your head to Israel. I mean, this is insanity.
Those Jewish Americans are probably anti-Semitic.
Yeah, no, but they say crap like that.
No, they totally
do. They're lunatics. Lunatics. So no, they do not represent Jewish Americans. Jewish Americans have been at the forefront of the peace movement. Saul and all the other wonderful people that went there to confront him. Thank you. And by the way, if you're an Israeli supporting prick here in America, thank Saul and all the other wonderful Jewish Americans who have been in the peace movement. Otherwise, anti-Semitism would be an inferno right now. We are able to hold it back because I can point to hundreds, thousands of wonderful Jewish Americans going, no, not in our name. I'm not in favor of this genocide. So that's our brothers and sisters. And Wesley Bell, I'll use your real name for the second time here. Once I did it as an accident. Anyway, Tommy Bell, I'll go back to that. Okay, take good Jewish Americans' names out of your goddamn mouth, okay? You don't work for them, it's not about them. You work for a foreign lobby, you're not a US representative. You're a representative for the government of Israel. We all see you super clearly, and we think you're a pig. Is that clear enough?
I think it's pretty clear. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Trigonometry hosted Benjamin Netanyahu on his attempts to essentially launder his reputation. Did it work? Well, we'll show you a highlight that I think is worth getting into. Come right back.
All right, back on TYT. Jenna 111382 says Anthony Bourdain traveled to Gaza and detailed the devastating way Gaza was controlled by Israel, including the fishing blockade in parts unknown quite a while ago. The world just kept ignoring the unconscionable treatment of Palestinians. Yep, that's true. Another record we found out the other day and shared with you guys is record number of fishermen killed in a conflict, right? Because in this case, if they get fish from the water right next to Gaza, they won't starve. And Israel wants them to starve, so they're murdering the fishermen who go out to fish. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know that the Germans would have thought of that. Like, this is like such a sick, despotic government. It's totally dictatorial in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Anyone who calls it a democracy is obviously lying. Look, to be fair, it's not obvious because a lot of them really believe it. They believe their own propaganda. They're like, what? If you ignore Palestinians who are subhuman, we have a perfectly good democracy. Okay, Christina Elisa Brown says, thank you so much for being America's true news show, honest, fair, and unafraid. Cenk and Anna and TYT staff, you are appreciated. TYT is the one, not two, the one for America. Thank you for saying that, appreciate it. And these are all super chats, by the way. Michael Catalano says, can you imagine if Wolf Blitzer was murdered and the White House refused to offer condolences before because they couldn't prove that he wasn't a terrorist.
Well, I mean, we wouldn't want to offend the murderers, obviously.
Well,
it's
except Michael, you might not know this. Wolf Blitzer literally worked for AIPAC earlier in his career. I mean, imagine if one of the major cable news anchors of our lifetime used to work for the Grand Ayatollah. We're like, oh yeah, no big deal. No, and he keeps saying how right Iran is all the time. Every time Iran is right, you'd be like, that's curious, right? But no, shh. What do you think? You got freedom of speech? Shut up. Yeah. Everybody's an anti-Semite. Democracy Reboot Vanguard says, it was clear Israel repeats the tired lie Hamas hides behind human shields. That's not a justification, it's a deflection. The real shield is $1 billion war machines and nuclear threats. Genocidal terrorists hide behind the tanks, drones, fighter jets, and nukes they flaunt as threats. Gaza civilians have no shield, only rubble, collapsing hospitals, and the bodies of loved ones. The human shields claim is propaganda and excuse for bombing schools, erasing neighborhoods, turning refugee camps into graveyards under the false cover of self-defense rhetoric. Reality check, the overwhelming majority of casualties are children and civilians. That's not Hamas hiding, that's Israel choosing targets while fully aware who lives and dies there. That's all totally true.
I have to say something. Israel defenders think we're all stupid. And that adds insult to injury, right? Like, they think we're all dumb, empty-headed, easily manipulated idiots who can be either lied to believe things that aren't true, lied to believe things that aren't true, or coerced, manipulated, intimidated into repeating or regurgitating their lies. Some of us don't fall for it. And some of us don't appreciate being treated as if we're idiots who can't acknowledge reality. Like, they think they're so sophisticated.
No, but to be fair, Anna, everyone in mainstream media is an idiot. And they do easily control them.
No, they're not idiot. I think in the mainstream media and the corporate press, I think that they're doing what they think is rational. Looking out for themselves and their own careers, that's it. That's all they care about. Yeah.
Back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys, but also Jesus Christ. That's who just joined, that's their handle.
Our Lord and Savior.
Okay, thank you, brother, we appreciate it. Thank you for coming all the way down to join us. Michelle Moody gifted 10 memberships on YouTube, you guys are amazing. Hit the join button below, help us fight back to try to save more Palestinian lives as we can. One of the few shows doing it, obviously all of cable news, can't find the word genocide. Can't find any outrage, can't find any corruption.
Can't find any integrity.
Yeah, tyt.com/join.
All right, let's get to our next story.
One of the things that we have heard here in the West, and I wanted to get your perspective on it, is that in the run-up to what happened on October 7th, for many, many years, Israel was allowing, the Israeli government was allowing Qatar to pump money into Hamas and using that, in effect, to strengthen Hamas against the Palestinian Authority to prevent a united Palestinian state. What do you say to those claims?
In an effort to desperately launder his reputation in the middle of carrying out a genocide in Gaza and the annexation and land theft in the West Bank, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is granting interviews to friendlies, individuals who are diehard Zionists and supporters of the state of Israel. Trigonometry was the latest one, and to Konstantin Kissin's credit, in this case, he did ask Netanyahu an important question. Specifically, whether Netanyahu had facilitated the funding for Hamas. Let's see if he's willing to tell the truth for once in his life.
No way.
Israel was allowing, the Israeli government was allowing Qatar to pump money into Hamas and using that in effect to strengthen Hamas against the Palestinian Authority to prevent a united Palestinian state. What do you say to those claims?
Well, I think it's hogwash. I mean, we're stuck with Hamas. I was actually against leaving Gaza and resigned from the government when it did so, when it decided to tear out the settlements, because I said this will be overtaken by Hamas, and Hamas will use it as a platform, will use Gaza, a de facto Palestinian state in Gaza, to pellet us with missiles and rockets, the surrounding cities. This was poo-pooed by the government at the time. I thought it was insane. But once they gave up Gaza, that's exactly what happened. Hamas took it over and turned it into a terror bastion. And the question was, what do you do with it? Well, there were various theories. One of it was that you have to aid the civilian population in such a way that you don't have diseases. So you've got to take care of the sewage, you've got to take care of electricity, you've got to make sure there's no famine there.
You know, Benjamin Netanyahu, notorious for really sharing concern, engaging in behavior that would prevent something as disastrous as a famine in Gaza. Now, obviously he's lying, and unfortunately and somewhat expectedly, Konstantin Kisin did not challenge him on his lie at all. He just kind of moves on to whether or not the war criminal he's speaking to was aware of Hamas's terror tunnels. So what is the truth? Well, the truth is actually documented in multiple publications, both American and Israeli. Let's start with an American publication because it turns out that even CNN reported about this in December of 2023, writing that in a series of interviews with key Israeli players conducted in collaboration with Israeli investigative journalism organization Shomrim, CNN was told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu continued the cash flow to Hamas despite concerns raised from within his own government. So there was a widely reported meeting that Netanyahu held with members of his party, the Likud party, in early 2019, where he was quoted as saying that those who oppose the formation of a Palestinian state should support the transfer of funds to Hamas in Gaza. Now, why? Why is that? Well, look no further than Israeli publication, The Times of Israel. This headline will help you look up the piece if you want to read it for yourselves. For years, Netanyahu propped up Hamas. Now it's blown up in our faces. In it, Tal Schneider writes that Benjamin Netanyahu took an approach that divided power between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, bringing Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas to his knees while making moves that propped up the Hamas terror group. The idea, what was the idea? The idea was to prevent Abbas or anyone else in the Palestinian Authority's West Bank government from advancing toward the establishment of a Palestinian state. Most of the time, Israeli policy was to treat the Palestinian Authority, which by the way, played by the rules, collaborated with Israel, tried to do everything possible to, have a peaceful formation of a Palestinian state. But that's a threat to Israel because they don't want a Palestinian state. They want to do the Greater Israel Project, especially Likud, which has the Greater Israel Project as part of their charter. So how can you, delegitimize the Palestinian Authority and instead prop up Hamas to essentially make the Palestinians look like a dangerous terror group that can't have a state? Because if they do have a state, Cenk, they're gonna be a huge threat to the Israeli people. Let me read the rest of that graphic. Far-right MK Bezalel Smotrich, now the finance minister in the hardline government and leader of the religious Zionism party, said so himself in 2015. So this has been the policy, prop up Hamas to delegitimize the whole idea of forming a Palestinian state. That's what they did. And let's not forget that it literally took hours for IDF soldiers to respond to the Hamas attacks on October 7th. Let's also remember that there were 2 instances in which Israeli officials came across intelligence indicating that Hamas was planning that terror attack. And more importantly, the second piece of intel they received made it clear that they intended on kidnapping hundreds of hostages. But they didn't act on that The Israeli government, notoriously paranoid about everything, didn't act on that intelligence. Interesting. And then now you have Israeli soldiers testifying, okay? And you can look up these videos. They're testifying, they're showing their identity, they're doing it publicly. Testifying that they were told to stand down on the morning of October 7th. Why? Why were they told to stand down? Why isn't that being addressed in the American media? I mean, to the credit of Israeli publications and Israeli media, they're covering it. But here in the United States, you have a huge population of Americans who have essentially absorbed all of the pro-Israeli slop without realizing that the current government of Israel just sat back and allowed October 7th to happen and are lashing out at everyone else instead of taking responsibility for their failures. Cenk.
So Netanyahu also in one of these interviews explained how he wants to take over more of American media. I'm going to get to that in a second. But we know that the Israeli government, that's reported everywhere, was aware of that October 7th was being planned. And they say, oh man, that's just the one that got past the goalie. I mean, we thought, they have the paragliders and the most sophisticated attack that's ever been done. I mean, because Palestinians basically have nothing. Paragliders are gigantic. But
when are we gonna have paraglider control, Cenk?
Yeah.
Common sense paraglider control.
So the Israelis know where every single Hezbollah leader, Hamas leader, Iranian diplomat, blah, blah, blah is at any moment. They've got the pagers, they've got.
They can assassinate an Iranian nuclear scientist through a strike that goes through the window of their apartment. That's how sophisticated Israel can be if they want to be.
Oh, there's a huge, like almost an army-like attack coming across the border. We thought it was not important.
We did not expect this.
And there's IDF soldier on tape going, I don't know why they told us to stand down. We were there from 5:20 in the morning to 9 o'clock. They wouldn't let us patrol the border. Come on, guys. So now it's not just Netanyahu. Ariel Sharon and the right wing and Likud government has constantly encouraged Hamas for the same reason. Well, there's two reasons. The one that Anna mentioned, which is to split the Palestinians in two, divide and conquer. The Palestinian Authority is too strong in their opinion, so you create Hamas. And so then Hamas will weaken Palestinian Authority and then, but that'll create more terrorism. But that leads to reason number two. Anytime they can claim self-defense, it allows them to take more land. So like in 1948, they had 6% of the land, all of a sudden they get 50%, but now driving out all the Palestinians, they're gonna need an excuse. Because what are they gonna do, let the Palestinians stay, then they'll be outvoted, and then that's the end of the Jewish state on day one, right? So they've gotta slaughter them and move them out, and they did. 750 to 800,000 Palestinians ran for their lives. Here in America, we're told this hilarious fable about, oh yeah, the Arabs attacked the poor Israelis. They had to do self-defense. And so all of a sudden the Palestinians are slaughtered. They and the rest run for their lives, like I told you. And all of a sudden they have, in 1967, they attack all of their neighbors, destroy all of their air forces, and then claim self-defense. So my point to you guys is twofold. One is they love divide and conquer. They've been supporting Hamas throughout. By the way, they now have a new militia they're supporting in Gaza that we told you about a week ago that is supposed to split Hamas.
Oh my God, that's just.
Okay, so that new militia, by the way, will one day do a terrorist attack against Israel. And then Israel will take Lebanon or Syria or wherever they want to take next. Meanwhile, by the way, encouraging terrorism because they think it might help Israel. Netanyahu was asked right after 9/11 what he thought of 9/11. Now, I'm not saying anything, guys. All I'm doing is reading you his quote, okay? He said, quote, "It's very good." And the reporter was like, "It's very good," right? And Netanyahu then realizes, oh, I shouldn't have said that out loud. And he says, well, not very good, but it will generate immediate sympathy and strengthen the bond between our two peoples. Interesting, so he thought 9/11 was very good. He looked the other way on October 7th. And this is our special ally.
Special ally.
Special ally. Okay, now I turn to the next thing he said in the interviews. He said, and this is a quote, "We must deal with the social media algorithms." So they had mainstream media on complete lockdown. Now they still do, but it's irrelevant now because there's social media. And so they're getting swarmed with the smartphone footage and all this. So then they try to shut down TikTok. And Mitt Romney and other politicians said on tape, we're not doing it because of China, we're doing it because of Israel. They want to shut down TikTok. And now TikTok, by the way, in September has now hired a person that will now report to Israel.
A former IDF soldier who is now working for the app to censor anti-Semitic posts.
Yeah, that's a joke. Of course, anything that's anti-Israel now going to get banned there, right? Because they say, well, if you don't do that, we're going to make you sell it and you're going to lose hundreds of billions of dollars. So that political influence allows them to control that amount of money, which allows TikTok to go, yes, sir, we will now serve Israel starting in September 13th. We will serve Israel loyally, sir. Okay. And now Netanyahu says, no, I want all the social media algorithms. You in America are not allowed to criticize Israel. Know your role, you serve me, okay? And Americans, we're sitting here going, can any of our politicians stand up to this guy? This guy who's like a modern day Goebbels and Hitler. He's bragging about how he's murdering 20,000 children right in front of our eyes, starving the Palestinians to death. Like a despotic figure like we haven't seen in so long. And American media bows down to him and American politicians bow down to him. 2% of Congress says Palestinians should be a state. The rest of Congress is like, we serve Israel loyally. No, this is gonna lead to a ton of trouble. And I don't want the trouble guys going in the wrong places. For the billionth time, not against Jewish Americans, does not have to do with religion. Greatest fighters we have, Dave Smith, Robert, I don't want to name names, they're wonderful, okay? And they're for peace and they're for America, okay? You should take your ire out on the disgustingly corrupt politicians we have and the disgustingly corrupt mainstream media we have. That in the face of overwhelming evidence that Israel controls our politicians and has taken $310 billion from Americans and is now using it for a genocide. They say, no, we serve Israel loyally. It's disgusting and you should be enraged about it.
All right, we're gonna talk a little bit about why Ben Rhodes is so furious at the free press. Recent piece talks about starvation in Gaza. We'll get into the details and more when we come back.
Back on TYT. Let's go to, guys, first of all, speaking of going to places, check out our Substack. Check out shoptyt.com when you get a chance. Fly the colors, be proud. We appreciate all you guys who wear the Young Turks merch, whether it says Young Turks or anything else on it. The Real Chem says, we all need to be Jankanana. We should all just be as mad and screaming at the top of our lungs. We're no longer a democracy and we need to fight like hell to get our country back. Guys, the number one reason for it is not some sort of like devious plot by Netanyahu. The number one reason for it is money in politics. As long as there's money in politics, anyone can buy our politicians, and they do. They all buy them. Almost all of our politicians are corrupt. Mainstream media is filled to the rim with nothing but liars, telling you that they're not corrupt when they're obviously corrupt. They all gorge millions of dollars from different lobbies. They don't represent you at all. All those corporate Democrats and all those corporate Republicans are prostitutes for their donors. I hope that's clear enough. Amy Meganson says, I believe your show has been able to open eyes of America. I credit TYT as leading the country and educating America. I'm truly grateful for your leadership. Amy, thank you for saying that. Mar Jordan writes in, I love you guys. How can we stop Israel now? How about stop paying taxes? I wish that would work, but guys, when I think it can work, I'll tell you, but I don't think it'll work now. It'll just get you in trouble. Okay, but one thing that you should do is you should, and we have a petition about this, you should never ever vote for anyone who takes AIPAC money because they're proudly declaring that they work for a different country. If you take AIPAC money, you're saying, I will not represent you. There's no way in the world, between you and Israel, I'm gonna choose Israel 100% of the time. So, I mean, voting for a dog of Israel, then then you're saying, yeah, I'm good with it. I want Israel to rule.
Oh my God, this is hilarious. So that Stop Anti-Semitism Twitter account tried to attack me for mentioning the FBI documents that had investigated the 5 Israeli nationals who were seen, according to a witness who was interviewed by ABC News, by the way. That witness saw these 5 Israeli nationals celebrating as the planes hit the towers, okay? That led to an investigation, and in the FBI documents, the Israeli nationals stated that they were just here to document the events. How did you know that the events were gonna happen? Anyway, the US just let them go after detaining them for a few months. But anyway, Stop Anti-Semitism was attacking me for bringing attention to that. And a bunch of people were defending me with evidence. So they changed the settings so no one can comment.
Oh, Anna broke anti-Semitism website.
Anti-Semitism.
That account, that's awesome. And by the way, they don't care about anti-Semitism at all. They'll
At
also,
all.
At all. The Israeli lobby very often attacks Jewish Americans who they say have now bowed their heads to Israel. So they're total giant liars. They don't care about Jews at all. They care about America being dogs of Israel. I love that you shut down their comment section.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened now? Who's on the goddamn run, huh?
Now the only people who can comment are people that the account follows.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
amazing.
Go ahead, you Israeli propagandist. I would say investigate where their funding comes from, but our government is so corrupt, they would never investigate a beloved, cherished Israeli supporting organization. The Canadian Beaver says Canada also recognizes a Palestinian state, much love there. Lady AF says, I keep coming across Jews talking about what Cenk just said about the state of Israel being against the religion. That is true. I love that. We'll be back.
Anti-Semitism.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
All right, we got to talk about this incredible moment featuring Ben Rhodes. Let's take a look.
If your reaction to looking at children literally starving to death in a place where 20,000 children have already been killed is to try to dunk on those kids, or the New York Times for putting a picture of one of those kids on the front page by pointing out that there's some other condition that the starving kid is suffering from, that's sociopathic. I actually feel some pity for you, right? Like I mean this. There's something wrong with you, deeply, deeply f***ed up with you.
That is correct. The individual you just heard from is Ben Rhodes, who hammered the Israeli propaganda that is regurgitated by Barry Weiss's publication, The Free Press. And it really has to do with a piece that was published recently about starvation in Gaza. Now, Rhodes was commenting on this piece during Pod Save the World's podcast, which is a foreign policy podcast hosted by Tommy Vitor, who also, of course, co-hosts Pod Save America. Now, the Free Press article was published over the weekend and it's titled, "They Became Symbols for Gazan Starvation, but all 12 suffer from other health problems."
So it's like, no, but guys, it's like going to a cancer ward in America and shooting 12 of them dead and going, well, they already had cancer.
I mean, did you know they had cancer? Are you blaming the shooter for shooting them?
And they were gonna die anyway. I mean, they weren't gonna die, they had an ailment. We just decided if they have an ailment and we starve them, they'll die quicker. Wait, how does that help?
Also, how does it help knowing that these 12 individuals, these 12 children who suffered from other health problems live in a territory where Israel bombed every single hospital? And there's also footage showing IDF soldiers happily destroying the equipment in said hospitals.
Okay, my favorite out of the 12.
Are you proud of yourself, Barry Weiss? You feel good about the country that you support?
Yeah.
Not this country, of course, the other country, Israel.
Of course,
yeah.
She doesn't care about America at all. Look, for those guys, Mark Levin, Barry Weiss, Ben Shapiro, Laura Loomer, they would pick Israel over America 1 billion times, 1 billion. If you said one country's in danger, which one are you going to protect? It's a no-brainer for them. Like, America, Israel, my beloved Israel. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Okay, so one of this abhorrent, disgusting article in Free Press said, yeah, but one of the kids already had a problem with his head because he had gotten hit by shrapnel in an Israeli bombing. So it was no big deal that he starved.
Totally, yeah. Israel's like totally innocent now after their bombing led to the shrapnel injury.
In the baby's head, in the child's head.
Imagine being in the position, right? Like imagine finding yourself in the position where you have to defend Israel. Like you almost do feel sorry for them because it's indefensible.
Yeah, I don't feel sorry for fascists.
That's why I say you almost feel sorry for them. And then you remember what they're defending. This is so disgusting. You know, it's funny because, I mean, you say this all the time, Cenk. How did people allow the Nazis to do what they did? And you think, oh, well, people have evolved since then. It's like stupid to think that. It would never happen today. But not only is it happening today, you literally have publications in the US that mainstream media outlets like CBS are thinking about purchasing for $250,000, spewing this nonsense propaganda.
$250 million. And
what did I say?
I'm not sure if you said million or billion. But guys, what's amazing about that story is that the company considering purchasing them clearly said that they are overpaying because they're pro-Israel.
Yeah.
And why would you say that? You would say that if you wanted to influence the rest of the media. Now, if you're good boys and girls and do propaganda for Israel, you'll get a lot of money. But if you don't, that's it, we're gonna punish you. But don't say we control anything. Don't say it, okay? If you say you're an anti-Semite. But if you say, hey, Israel's right to put shrapnel in a kid's head so he's almost dead and then starve him to death, that's not anti-Muslim, that's not bigoted, that's not anti-Palestinian, that's good, those lower human beings. They're not even human. We murdered, so what? So what, we killed 20,000 kids, but they're just Palestinian kids. But the real problem is your bigotry, because you're complaining about the murder of 20,000 kids. You're a bigot against Jews. No, I got no problem with Jewish Americans at all, Jews anywhere. In fact, they've been wonderful to me throughout my life, wonderful. Okay, I got a problem with people supporting a fascist genocide and getting paid for it and being gleeful about it.
Yep.
Okay, so of course they're gonna attack Ben Rhodes. Ben Rhodes is good. So let me let you finish the story, but I'm gonna come back and tell you about Ben Rhodes because he's a really interesting guy.
So look, the article, to be fair, does admit that people are starving. Are they not merciful? It's not that there isn't hunger in Gaza. There is. The World Health Organization reported 63 deaths from malnutrition last month alone, including 25 children. But, the authors continue, some of them might have been sick, or worse even, if there was no war.
Well, the war helped them?
Worse, even if there was no war. Okay.
Disgusting
these
fascists.
writers are so disgusting. Okay, let me continue though, okay? What's the argument? In 2022, about 50 Gazans under the age of 20 died from malnutrition, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Okay, well, in the article, the Free Press notes that some of these starving children who were photographed in Gaza have cerebral palsy or cystic fibrosis. They didn't, like, how exactly would they be worse off if it weren't for the genocide happening in Gaza? I mean, how does that make any sense? There was
think about it, guys. If in the middle of the Holocaust, some son of a bitch came around and said, well, they might be better off in the gas chambers, you would want to do what? You want, like, it's hard to contain your rage against that, right? So these monsters are saying, well, I mean, they had pre-existing conditions like, they might have had cancer or MS or whatever they had, so we killed them by starving them to death. So doesn't that make us better? No, it makes you a terrorist.
Here's an excerpt from the article that enraged Tommy Vitor, which is good to hear. Another host over at Pod Save America. Take a look.
The Free Press, the argument they make in this article is that the images don't prove there's a famine because the kids featured have other health problems too. They have like 12 different examples they use. And one is a photo of a 14-year-old boy named Mossab Al-Debs. He's described by CNN as suffering from malnourishment. But the big gotcha from the Free Press is that the story didn't mention that the kid suffered a traumatic brain injury after he was hit in the head by shrapnel from an IDF airstrike. So that they think that is making their point. Who do you think dies first in a famine? Right? It's people with pre-existing conditions. Not mentioned is the fact that the IDF has blown up all the medical facilities in Gaza, so these kids can't get treatment they might need to look less emaciated or to be healthier. The Free Press story is so condescending. It's like, you don't need in-depth reporting or to be on the ground. You just need Google. It's like, that is you and your obnoxious scolding tone.
Sanctimonious. Yeah. And again, you're looking at people who are objectively starving. Your reaction how to, quote, cover that story is to try to poke holes.
Try to weaponize it.
Yeah. I mean, it's
just gross.
It's grotesque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's, okay, first of all, when you've lost Pod Save America, you're in a lot of trouble, okay, in my opinion, because Pod Save America is kind of a bellwether for where the Obama team and the mainstream is going, right? So they're not gonna be the first ones to be outraged at Israel, and they weren't. It took a long, long time, right? And so, look, I'm not trying to blame them. I'm telling you, it's a good thing that they've come to this position, and they've done a wonderful segment there calling out Free Press, and we appreciate it. And it means that the tide has turned. And so now, before, I know I've lived it my whole life, if you criticize Israel, you're shunned and shamed and accusations and recriminations and whispers, oh, anti-Semite, hateful, make sure he doesn't get any jobs, et cetera, right? So, and by the way, another victim of that is Ben Rhodes, which is what I'm gonna get to. But,
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so now when you get to the point where we are today, it's now, if you're a supporter of the genocide in Israel, people look at you like, wow, you're kind of disgusting. You want to kill those kids? And so I'm here for it. Of course you should shun and shame someone who's a terrorist supporting person who loves genocide and says, no, my blind allegiance to a foreign government is more important than those babies. Well, that's deeply sick. So real quick, Ben Rhodes. So he used to work in the Obama administration, and he has been attacked a lot by the Israeli interests. In fact, they took out private investigators to investigate him and his wife.
Oh my God.
Okay, to try to dig up dirt on him.
Wow.
And I said, what in the world? So there's my guess is there's two things that particularly brought out their ire. One was that he was in favor of the Iran deal, which they hated. Right. Even though it took nukes and uranium away from Iran, it was the best thing Obama did, and Ben Rhodes was in favor of it. Deserves tremendous credit, okay? And so that way Iran couldn't attack Israel or any of its neighbors, couldn't have nukes.
It took Israel's excuse for a regime change war in Iran away.
Exactly.
That's why they hated the Iran.
They hated it because it led to peace and they wanted war with Iran.
Yep. They
wanted an excuse. Okay, the second reason is because Ben Rhodes is Jewish. So they hate it when they can't use the anti-Semite card. That drives them crazy, right? And then they hold and finally at some point they go, anti-Semite, because they can't help it. That's the only thing they have. That's their one trick pony, right? So that's why guys like Ben Rhodes, again, I don't want to name all the names, but all the wonderful people, I'll just name like Peter Beinart, et cetera, Robert Greenwald, all these guys doing God's work, angelic work here to try to stop the genocide, et cetera. And all the people like Barry Weiss are out there trying to smear all their names. No, Israel is Jews. Israel is Jews. So if you hate the genocide that Israel's doing, you should hate the. What are you doing, Barry? What are you doing? Are you a lunatic? No, I'm telling everyone in the audience, Israel does not equal Jews.
So final thing, look, the reason why Israel is losing the PR war is because they're committing a genocide. And the images, the videos of what's happening in Gaza, what's happening to the Palestinian people in the West Bank has soured Americans' perception of Israel as like this wonderful free democracy. I mean, they're committing a genocide. So what does Netanyahu want to do? obviously he can't really do positive PR for himself. He's a ghoul, so he wants to do something else. Let's watch.
You know, it's very hard to fight the the deception, the lies, the starved children. The pictures of starved children who turn out to have cerebral palsy or other congenital diseases that leave them emaciated. And Israel is, of course, accused of starving children, pretty much the way that in the Middle Ages Jews were accused of killing Christian children for their blood. So, you know, what do you do against the lie that circles the earth 10 times before the truth has a chance to emerge? You have to shorten the war as speedily as possible. And frankly, we also have to do something about the algorithms and the social networks. This is a big challenge. I don't want to dismiss it. But look, we Jews have been fighting and losing the propaganda war for about 2,500 years.
I don't know about losing the propaganda war for 2,500 years, but the state of Israel losing the propaganda war in recent decades probably has something to do with the persecution and mass slaughter of innocent Palestinians.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe that.
Two giant admissions there.
Yeah.
We have been doing the propaganda wars for all these years. Did you ever declare that before? So, okay, he just told you they do propaganda against America to manipulate us and brainwash us into supporting Israel with nonsensical talking points like best democracy in the Middle East while they keep 5.5 million prisoners in the West Bank and Gaza Strip.
Most moral army.
Dictatorship in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Most moral army when their IDF is a group of terrorists now that has a worse civilian kill ratio than Hamas does. Has killed 60 times as civilians. I can go on and on. We have a right to defend ourselves, but the Palestinians don't. But did you notice the second thing he admitted? Oh, we're gonna come after the social media algorithms because we've allowed too much freedom in America. We're gonna tighten the leash. Tighten the leash, okay? We got the American politicians under control. We got mainstream media under control. Now social media is bothering us a little bit. We're gonna have to work on those algorithms, okay? So that's who Netanyahu is, a disgusting terrorist. And if you're part of the free press and you're supporting Netanyahu, you're a terrorist supporter and you disgust me.
Yep.
And all good Americans should really be outraged by all of the Israel first people who are saying, all American taxpayers should take money out of our pockets and fund a genocide where they slaughter children like this.
All right, bonus episode is next. We'll talk a little bit about new data showing just how much trouble the Democratic Party is in. And I don't know, we gotta talk about that Chinese advisor too. I don't know if she's Chinese, but like a woman who advises Eric Adams, like literally tried to bribe a journalist in the most like ham-handed way. Yeah. So that and more coming up, tyt.com/join to become a member, and we'll see you there.